That said, I'm sure this will get plenty of comments and debate on the effectiveness of these recommendations in these trying times. Today we go through another OR report and see what raw findings are ready to forge.
You are listening to the Innovation Forge, the #1 podcast on adaptive enrollment management, exploring the data, marketing, and strategy that fuels higher education. Here's your host, David Dysart.
Forge Bellows, The Great Enrollpression, Chapter 4, The Erosion of Public Trust in Higher Education. How trust cools, fractures, and can be reforged. Observation. In the forge, you can feel when the metal changes. It doesn't snap all at once. It actually cools gradually. The color shifts from bright orange to dull red. The hammer still falls, but if you listen, the ring is different. Public confidence in higher education has cooled in much the same way. According to Gallup's long-running confidence series, the share of U.S. adults expressing a great deal, or quite a lot, of confidence in higher education fell from 57% in 2015 to 36% in 2023. Now, in 2024, the headline number remained flat at 36%. In 2025, it rose to 42%. This is the first measurable increase in a decade. Yet, it's still well below its mid-2010s heat. The cooling is real. But the signal is just more nuanced than that headline. Confidence in higher education as an institution is not the same as belief in the wage premium of a degree. And it's not identical to demand. It is not uniform across parties, sectors, or even demographics. The furnace is unstable. The alloy is uneven, and the public is no longer treating college as a default. It's become a risk judgment, an uncertain calculation. So let's get to the raw findings ready to forge. Reading the signal. Trust behaves like metal under stress. It bends before it breaks. 3 major forces are pressing on the alloy: affordability and financial risk, uncertainty about job relevance, and political polarization and legitimacy concerns. These are not separate pieces of scrap. They've all fused together. The public does not experience college as a philosophical abstraction. They experience it as a borrowing decision, as a 4-year wager, even as a deferred return with unclear timing. Pew's 2025 survey shows 79% of adults say colleges are doing a fair or even poor job keeping tuition affordable. Only 22% say a 4-year degree is worth it if loans are required. Americans owe roughly $1.6 trillion in student debt, a staggering 42% more than a decade ago. That's not just a cost story, that's actually a risk story. And at the same time, signals from the labor market complicate the picture. The share of jobs requiring a college degree has declined from 51% in 2017 to 44%. At least 16 states have removed degree requirements for many public sector roles. Even when wage premiums remain positive in aggregate, which they do, the perception of exclusivity weakens. Add this to a third pressure point: legitimacy. Among those with low confidence, 41% cite concerns about political agendas or ideological bias. Republicans report dramatically lower confidence levels than Democrats, and independents split their skepticism between cost, political bias, and teaching relevance. The metal is not shattering, but it is no longer uniformly tempered. Evidence in the ore. 1. The Gallup confidence series: cooling, then a flicker of heat. So, Gallup's trend line shows a steep drop from 2015 to 2023, a flat 2024, and a modest rebound to 42% in 2025. Important guardrails. The measure is about confidence in higher education as an institution, not a specific degree's ROI. The confidence in most U.S. institutions has declined broadly. Higher education still ranks near the top, even at these historical lows, though. A Pew question about whether the system is headed in the right direction shows 70% say a wrong direction. This is a different but related construct. Measurement matters. Heat readings vary depend on where you place the thermometer. 2. Affordability, the converging pressure point. Across party lines, affordability is the most consistent driver. 79% rate colleges poorly on affordability. Sticker prices continue rising across sectors. Net prices for many aided students have been stable or, realistically, even declining, but the nuance is poorly understood and communicated even worse. Sticker price anchors perception. The anvil remembers the first strike. State funding debates complicate the narrative. The State Higher Education Executive Officers Association reports per-student funding rising above pre-pandemic levels. Yet other analysis shows appropriation cuts correlate with tuition increase and instructional spending changes. Meanwhile, some argue long-run state funding has risen in inflation-adjusted terms. The ore is mixed, but the public rarely parses these fiscal nuances. They see the sticker, and if the institution is lucky, they may just stay long enough to see the bill. 3. Workforce relevance and underemployment. Pew reports 55% say colleges do a fair or possibly poor job preparing students for well-paying jobs. And that's before the AI wave has begun to capsize expectations. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York estimates the median internal rate of return to college at 12.5% in 2024, while cautioning that at least a quarter of graduates may not see positive returns. The wage premium remains strong. Bachelor's degree holders earned median weekly average wages of $1,543 in 2024, compared to $930 for high school graduates. But distribution matters. If expansion increases underemployment risk for some graduates, as sociological research on relative education suggests, then prominent anecdotes of struggle can outweigh statistical averages in shaping public perception. Averages glow, but the stories spark. 4. Political polarization and viewpoint openness. Confidence differs sharply by party. Republicans report far lower high confidence levels than Democrats. In 2025, Democrats' confidence sits above 60%, while Republicans remains in the mid-20s. Pew finds 45% say colleges do poorly at exposing students to a wide range of opinions. The Vanderbilt Unity poll echoes concerns about ideological neutrality. This is not a fringe perception. It is a central legitimacy challenge. 5. Enrollment and behavioral shifts. Enrollment fell 15% from 2010 to 2021, with 42% of decline attributed to the pandemic period. Recent data shows partial recovery, especially in community colleges and certificate programs. The certificate enrollment at community colleges is up more than 28% since fall 2021. These shorter, low-cost, job-aligned pathways are gaining traction, and conditional trust produces conditional enrollment. Implications for the forge floor. If confidence is a risk judgment, then our task is not persuasion, it's risk reduction. 3 practical realities emerge. 1. The default is gone. College is no longer assumed, it must be justified. Families now perform a portfolio analysis, cost, debt, time to degree, job signal, institutional brand, political climate, campus saving, belonging. Enrollment strategy must meet that analytical posture. Broad, generic claims will not hold heat. 2. Affordability messaging must become concrete. The sticker versus net gap is one of the largest trust fractures. Institutions that provide scenario-based cost projections, clarify grant likelihoods early, separate borrowing from required cost, publish median debt by program, will reduce uncertainty. Transparency cools fear. 3. Workforce integration is no longer optional. Preparation for life after college is the strongest predictor of students believing their degree is worth the cost. Career services cannot remain peripheral. Internships, co-ops, employer partnerships, alumni outcome dashboards. These aren't enhancements. They are structural supports in the alloy. 4. Viewpoint openness must be demonstratable. Institutions cannot message their way out of polarization, but they can operationalize openness, publish clear, free expression policies, facilitate visible cross-ideological dialogue, train faculty on viewpoint diversity pedagogy, measure campus climate regularly. Legitimacy grows from practice, not press releases. That said, I'm sure this will get plenty of comments and debate on the effectiveness of these recommendations in these trying times. 5. Specific segment strategy matters. Confidence amongst Black and Hispanic adults sits slightly above national averages. Confidence in 2-year colleges exceeds that of 4-year institutions. The alloy differs by audience, so must our forging. Moves to test. Publish program-level ROI dashboards, show earnings ranges, debt levels, and completion rates by major. Replace sticker-first marketing with net-first narratives. Lead communications with typical grant-adjusted cost. Embed paid work in the curriculum. Reduce opportunity cost in signal applied learning. Host structured viewpoint forums. Make intellectual diversity visible and measurable. Track and publicize post-graduation placement windows. 3-month, 6-month, 12-month employment transparency builds credibility. Short-form credential ladders offer stackable pathways that reduce upfront commitment risk. Debt scenario counseling in junior year of high school. Shift the decision from emotional to analytical before application season. Each strike must land cleanly. No wild swings. Blueprint breakdown. This is the tempered summary and the final shaping of the metal after the long heat. What remains when the sparks settle is not noise, but structure. 1. Confidence is conditional. The public is no longer granting higher education automatic legitimacy. They evaluate it as a financial and cultural risk decision. 2. Affordability anchors trust. Sticker price dominates perception. Without clear net cost translation, families default to assuming high risk. 3. Returns are uneven. The wage premium persists in aggregate, but distributional variation and underemployment stories erode belief in the category. 4. Polarization fuels legitimacy gaps. Political identity now shapes institutional confidence, making demonstrated viewpoint openness a strategic imperative. 5. Shorter pathways signal safety. Growth in certificates and community colleges reflect demand for lower cost, job-aligned, lower risk entry points. The metal has not failed. It has shifted under pressure. Our task is not to polish the old surface, but to retemper the alloy with transparency, relevance, and proof strong enough to ring true under the hammer. Open question. If public confidence has shifted from cultural esteem to financial legitimacy risk assessment, are we redesigning institutions to reduce that risk, or are we still trying to defend the old narrative? What would it look like to build a campus model explicitly engineered for low trust conditions? Forge note. Metal rarely fails without warning. It whispers first. It cools. It resists shaping. The erosion of public confidence in higher education is not a sudden collapse. Though recent tumbles have been dramatic, targeted, and aggressive, it is a gradual shift from assumed value to conditional value. The wage premiums remain, research output remains respected, innovation remains strong, but the public no longer grants automatic legitimacy. Trust must be reforged through transparency, affordability, clarity, workforce integration, and demonstrated openness. The furnace is still lit. The ore is still strong, but this alloy requires new tempering. Every signal starts as raw ore. The work begins when we strike. Source ore. For URLs, visit the show notes or my newsletter on LinkedIn and Substack. Gallup Confidence Trend Series, 2015 to 2025. Pew Research Center surveys on direction, affordability, and value. Vanderbilt Project on Unity and American Democracy polling. College Board tuition and net price reporting. State Higher Education Executive Officers Association finance data. Federal Reserve Bank of New York return to college estimates. U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics earnings by education. Burning Glass Institute skills-based hiring research. National Student Clearinghouse enrollment trends. Georgetown CEW ROI analysis. U.S. Department of Education earnings indicator announcement. If you enjoyed today's episode,
Please grow the guild by rating and reviewing the Innovation Forge podcast, or sharing it with a colleague who needs to hear about these creative crossovers in education. The best review or comment every month will get an ebook of my book, of course. Particularly great ones will also be featured on future episodes. Thank you so much for joining me in the workshop today. Remember to strike true, and let's forge something extraordinary together.
To glow without a question, bright as fire in an open sky. 4 years cast an iron promise, no one asking why. The sparks flew high on borrowed money, the hammer rang with borrowed time. We forged the future on an anvil, stand, you'll be fine. But the heat began to falter, metal started showing seams, $1 trillion worth of doubt cracking through the dream. The price is loud, the payoff late, the furnace hums with second thoughts. Is this a door? Is this a game? When the anvil cools, you hear it change. The ring turns hollow in the flame. Public faith like iron rust, if you don't tend it just the same. When the hammer falls, it's not the sound, it's what remains when sparks die down. Trust is steel, but steel must bend before it breaks upon the ground. 51% once needed, now 44 still asks the same. States remove the paper armor, degrees don't guard the gate. Some say values in the average, 12% return on state. But averages don't calm a mother watching her child take on debt. Sticker price like molten warning, even when the net runs thin. If you don't show the whole equation, fear will always win. Risks are strong, wages high, but stories travel faster now than charts can justify. When the anvil cools, you hear it change. The ring turns hollow in the flame. Public faith like iron rust, if you don't tend it just the same. When the hammer falls, it's not the sound, it's what remains when sparks die down. Trust is steel, but steel must bend before it breaks upon the ground. Red or blue, the cracks run deep. Constant culture promises we keep. Open doors or closed off views. What are we teaching? What do they choose? Certificates stacked like careful stairs. Shorter climbs, fewer fears. If belief is now conditional, we must build what's visible. Show the numbers, show the work, show the cost before the clerk, show the path from class to pay. Make the proof impossible to sway. When the anvil cools, we strike again. Retemper steel in honest flame. No more myths to carry weight, no more shields without a name. When the hammer falls, let it be clear. Transparency is what we forge here. Trust is earned in heat and light, not in silence and why the work begins when we reply. If confidence has turned to war, then strike it true and forge once more.